Thank you guys for joining us, both a few of you in person and those of you that are online on Zoom. This is our first in-person meeting, but we know that, with the Delta variant going on and the pandemic isn't really over, a lot of you are more comfortable online, so we're going to try to keep doing them every month like this. For those of you that want to be here in person, we'll have snacks and everything for you, and then for those of you who are more comfortable online, we're going to keep trying to stream our lectures as well. Today we have with us Shannon, TJ, and Kirk. Sorry. Kirk.
Yes.
Kirk. And they are going to talk to us about their nonprofit that they founded together called MORAES. That's MORAES. And it stands for Marine Order for Research and Action through Environmental Stewardship. They're going to talk to you about the different environmental activities that they do, why they're important, why these are issues that need to be addressed, and also what you can do to help. So with that, we are going to kick off with our first in-person citizen science lecture in a year and a half. And I'll hand it off to you guys. Thank you. You guys want to take it away?
Sure. So I'm assuming everyone can hear me from in here, all the hundreds of people in the room?
Smiling under the mask.
Good. So as Ramya introduced, we are MORAES, Shannon, myself, TJ, and Kirk, and we founded MORAES a couple years ago. We were trying to think of a name for the organization, and we kept going back and forth about what we thought would be a good name to represent all of the activities we wanted to do while simultaneously being, I guess, memorable. So we ended up sticking with MORAES, obviously to represent the moray eel. We were hoping that would be catchy enough. We have heard every variance of MORAES and MORAES and more, but MORAES, so if you ever forget, think of the eel, and that's what we were going for. And the idea behind it, as she said, is the Marine Order for Research and Action through Environmental Stewardship, hoping that would encompass all of the things that our organization would hopefully get to do as we progress. So it was founded in 2019. We are very new. We have gone through all the ups and downs that a new organization would go through of, just how do we get started? Who do we talk to? Where does the money come from? What do we want to do? We knew that between the three of us, we all had our work geared in environmental science through various aspects, but there was things that we wanted to do that weren't necessarily being met by our everyday career paths. So that's why we kind of came together with the idea that we were doing environmental things, but we would like to do more. And not only more, but we wanted to do things that we were personally passionate about. So when we came together, we just had all these ideas of these topics we wanted to cover and these events and these projects we wanted to do. And it just slowly progressed from there, kind of snowballing. We're a couple years in, and now, as you see, we have a couple projects that we really like and we're really excited about and we're passionate about, and where we each get to kind of focus on the niches that we are particularly interested in, which is, that's the whole point of doing stuff that you care about. So as you can see, our mission here is, it's up there, it's to inspire and retain local ecologists and local scientists, but more so than that, we want this to be an organization that we can help ourselves, but also anyone else who's interested and passionate about the environment. For people that might want the opportunity to just go out there and volunteer, or just give back, or just get involved in general, we were hoping that we could be that outlet for them. So it's a selfish endeavor for us personally, but also something that we would hope to give others the opportunity to follow through. Anything to add on that, Kirk?
No, great.
So this is the three of us, and then we have our fourth board member over here who is signed in virtually, Stacy. But Shannon, if you want to just kind of give a little introduction on yourself.
Hi, my name is Shannon Jones, and my full-time position is actually at Frost Science as a conservation programs manager there. So I've always been involved in conservation and marine habitat, education, community involvement is really my passion. And so when I met Kirk a few years, actually I guess for like 5 years now, in one of the Florida Master Naturalist classes, he was my teacher, and we just hit it off, and we had this passion of just keeping this education and community involvement going, and that's kind of where we started collaborating.
Yep, as I said, my name is TJ. I'm currently a scientist who works for NOAA over there in Virginia Key. I work for the Fisheries Management Department, specifically fisheries statistics. So I've been with them for 8 years now, doing a number of different positions through NOAA, and then volunteering on various marine mammal strandings, which was set up through Kirk, or doing the MOVE projects through Shannon, just a number of different opportunities. And this was something that they, once the idea started developing, was something that I was incredibly interested in and happy to be a part of.
My name is Kirk, and I am born and raised here in Miami, so I've always had a passion for this field since I was a little kid. I was just explaining that, we used to come to Key Biscayne all the time to go to the beach, and that's really probably where my spark and passion came from. I actually worked for 10 years at the Biscayne Nature Center with Theo Long. So I'm ingrained in this area, and I have a background in marine mammal stranding and response, which if you've all lived on the Key long enough, I'm sure you've had, on the news, you've seen a dolphin or a whale strand here on the shores of Key Biscayne beaches. And through that experience, I've learned some of the do's and don'ts with that process, and I thought there was a chance there to really enhance that and move that forward and give folks who might be looking for that into this field, give them more of that opportunity. And that's where really we started with this idea for MORAES, came to that conclusion that this would be a great way to really enhance and propel the future, basically the youth of our community environment, to really start fostering and caring for the environment. Because that's, again, being born and raised here, I've seen some of the things going on with Biscayne Bay and the health and everything that's affecting our resources really start to decline. And it's up to the young folks to really take it to that next level. And we want to be here to be able to provide those opportunities because unfortunately there just aren't enough of them here. You would think with all the resources we have here in South Florida, all the natural, the beaches, the oceans, the bay, the Everglades, there really are very few opportunities for a long-term career in this field. So we want to make that different. That's what we're here to change. We're here to spark that community involvement.
Do I qualify as one of the young folks still?
You still do. Younger than I am, so yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about the 3 projects that we are currently involved with. The first one here is the evolution of Darwin Beach. So I don't know if you are, we're going to go into that. So the second one is the CASP, which Kirk.
I'll speak more about that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the third one here is what Shannon is going to focus on, and that is our sea turtle monitoring over on Virginia Key. So the first one is this evolution of Darwin Beach. So obviously we nailed the name, right? I mean, we couldn't have had a better added there. So I don't know if you're familiar with that beach that's right in between Miami Seaquarium and the Rosenstiel campus, right there in Virginia Key. Just a small, I don't know, would you say half-mile stretch of beach?
Yeah.
And it is just littered with everything from invasive species to
litter.
Yeah, litter, pun intended.
Yeah.
To marine debris, just because it's a frequently used beach. Trash constantly comes up there, but the vegetation has completely overtaken the actual shoreline, and with that, you get a number of negatives that are associated with invasive species. And one of the main ones is, if you've seen that beach, it's a small sliver of sand. And one of the things that the native plants do really well is that they keep that sand in place, and they're able to retain the shoreline and help with coastal erosion. And the invasive species, they're very good at getting into an area, expanding, displacing the native species, and then unfortunately once they've taken over and monopolized the beach, they don't have the characteristics that are necessarily as good when it comes to retaining that beach. So they come in, they remove the native species by being more effective at growing and reproducing and expanding, but then when they've taken over, they actually eliminate the beach, and that is a huge problem. So what we're trying to do is go through and identify the actual invasive species and figure out where they're growing and how to stop them, remove them, go in and replace them with native fauna and native flora that are supposed to be there, that were originally part of the Florida's coastal upland system. Yeah. So that's what we've been doing over the course of, I guess, 1.5 years now. We've hit a couple hiccups with COVID stuff, where we had our in-person events and we had to obviously put a halt on those just because of the group activities. But in the last couple of months, we've been able to come back and do a reduced group effort. 10 or so people come in, still get to go through all of the the due processes of what is this species, why is it bad, what can you do to help, and we've really been able to see a huge difference. I don't know if shows it. Oh, why do all the work? I believe, and don't quote me on the numbers here, I don't have it in front of me, but I think we've done around, let's see, over 32. There it is. Yeah, 3,200 square feet of exotic removal and then 500 pounds of marine debris, just in this small stretch of beach. So just what a few people have been able to do. And this was one of our first 2 events where we actually were able to get some numbers out there. And just what we were able to do in a few short hours is nearly night and day from what it looked like to what it is now. And even after a year of us pretty much not being able to get out there and attend to it just because of restrictions with COVID and access to the campus, it still is a completely different beach if you were to look at it, from an aerial view or even from the water itself. So we're very proud of what we've been able to do. And our goal is obviously to keep going with it and to continually expand until that entire beach system has been completely restored to what it's supposed to look like. It's not overflowing with all this green vegetation, and it looks like it's an actual beach that you would want to go and sit down and enjoy the water with. Excellent.
Can I ask who owns the beach?
Sure.
Who owns the beach?
Who owns the beach? I believe it's county owned.
That portion of the beach is actually county property.
They don't care.
Well, I don't know if they don't care, but it's probably such a small beach that they have other places to put in their resources to do work. And I think that beach abuts the Rosenstiel campus and Miami Sea Aquarium. So there's a lot of different working and moving parts there in different entities that we're working with all of them to really try and get everybody here and on the same page. Because I was going to add really quick that this Evolution of Darwin Beach, this is our big volunteer-based project. And so unfortunately with COVID, we've lost a lot of those volunteers. We actually have an event out there tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on.
I expect you all to be there. All right. Bring your gloves.
We've had to do the labor involved with a lot lower turnouts in terms of volunteers. So it's a labor of love because we are really devoted to restoring this beach to what TJ said, how it should look and how it should function. But it's still progressing. It's still an uphill battle at this point, just because of the capacity that we need in terms of man strength to be out there to get this work done. We're still behind the 8 ball because of all the restrictions and all that. So until that really turns around, we'll be doing it in smaller increments, smaller groups, but we're not going to stop until it's restored, like TJ said.
Yeah. Our goal is to get out there at least once a month. We've been pretty consistent with around the 3rd week of each month getting out there on either a Friday or Saturday and just putting out a couple hours and just make sure that we maintain it until we can get those big numbers up. But it's a really good sample size too, because we are such a small organization, and with the hiccups we've encountered, we have really been able to, I guess, use this as a projection for what we could do in the future. Because it's, if we were to come in and take this huge plot of land, that might be a little bit overwhelming. But since it's only a half-mile beach, and it represents pretty much a good representation of what the other beaches and larger beaches are, we can go in and we can kind of get our feet wet and understand what hiccups we may encounter and what we're doing wrong and how we can improve and how our data collection techniques were for the first time and what we could do for the second one and where we needed to improve. It's been a great learning process for the 3 of us, and it's been a great opportunity for others to get involved and really learn with, especially if you've ever been to that to the wet lab there on campus and you look out and you think the view is beautiful, and it is. Now, and if you would imagine, you go down and say, not only is that beautiful, I helped restore that. That's what it's supposed to look like, because I was out there and I physically removed the species that were ruining that beach, and now it's there and it's larger and it should remain intact longer because of the effort I put in. You just have a little bit more attachment to it, and it's a nice feeling.
And we've had students from MAST join us on these events and other community schools, so it's really that, like we were talking about earlier, that sense of like building up that younger core and getting them involved early is really a big thing for us. So our next project that we want to focus on is called CASP, or Cetacean Aerial Survey Project. For those of you who don't know, a cetacean is basically the scientific grouping of whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And this project was basically started because, well, it's a two-pronged project. We wanted to really find a non-invasive way to gather the data from wild populations of bottlenose dolphins in Florida Bay. And so we partnered with Dolphin Research Center in Grassy Key, and they've been so gracious to us to be able to work with some of the animals they have there at their facility. And what we're doing is we're using a, everybody knows as a drone to really enhance and take this research to the next level. While utilizing the drone, we're really having two phases of this project at the same time. The drone will be used for taking aerial photographs of the bottlenose dolphins, and with those photographs, we have software that we can use and download to really get the length and girth measurements of these animals and start a chart of basically body condition, basically a BCS score of how they're doing. You can tell if one of the animals are emaciated or if something's wrong just with these images and through that software. So starting that catalog of imagery for these dolphins is a huge step, and using a drone saves time and money from having to do it the old-fashioned way, which is following the animals with a boat. Once the dolphins see a boat, a lot of times it's it's called boat avoidance. They go away. They don't want to be seen anymore. So you spend most of the day chasing these dolphins on a boat, and you really don't get great photographs if it's not a clear crystal day. With a drone, you're flying above the animals. You can see where they are, even if they're under the water, with the capability of that camera. So that really does take this research a step further and allows us to gather more data faster, more efficiently, and at a cheaper rate than the old way.
And less invasive.
Exactly. And less invasive. The other method, the other part of this is a little bit more cutting edge, something that's been done with some of the larger cetaceans, like some of the larger whales, like gray whales. But nothing like this has been done with smaller cetaceans like a bottlenose dolphin. So the idea is, using this drone, you would be basically suspending a device underneath the drone that is geared to following the animals. And as the animals come up to the surface to breathe, again, knowing that these are mammals, obviously they have to come to the surface to breathe. Once they do take a breath, the drone is right there in flight and has basically a receptacle to capture that blow or that spit that comes out of their blowhole. And with that, we get so much information just based on those small pockets of DNA that we capture on that device. With that, we take that back to the lab, we analyze it for what we're looking for, virology, morphometrics, all kinds of things, general DNA studies, population health. And with that, we're doing it in a non-invasive way. So this is in opposition of, if you wanted that data now, the way you're supposed to, or one of the ways to get it is to basically go out there and you use a dart gun to take a biopsy sample from the animals. So you have to basically dart them and shoot them. That would bounce off the animals and then float in the water. You'd have to collect that. So we're trying to figure out if this can be done without having to harm or touch these animals at all. This is a very non-invasive approach to this, and like I said, it's kind of a cutting-edge thing. And so far, so good. We've been, through our connection with Dolphin Research Center, we've had many trial runs, and so far it's going great. We're gathering a lot of the information that we need, and I think we have one more trial run set in about 2 weeks. That, if everything goes well, then we'll be taking this this approach out into the field and doing it with those Bay Dolphins.
Which I think she had a question.
Oh, yes, sorry.
You may have answered it. I was wondering how you can identify that they're different dolphins, and because we're often out there a lot, and I wondered if we're seeing the same pods all the time. But then you talked about the DNA, so I guess you can.
Yeah, so you can. There's two ways. Obviously, if you get the DNA, you can tell. But that's a little bit more. It takes a little bit longer. But just because each of their dorsal fins is completely different, that's basically like our fingerprints. Once we get those great images, you can really zoom in on those dorsal fins and tell different, which individual's which.
The drone is capturing that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
You tested them for COVID?
Yeah.
No, but that's funny because we can put basically a solution into the device that is basically a trigger for almost anything that we want, really. So if there's a known pathogen or disease that's affecting a population out there, we can suspend that over the drone, underneath the drone, as it flies over the dolphins. If that becomes positive, you know that they're infected with whatever pathogen that might be inflicting them. So yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, we tested out the dart on me and then the drone on me, and I definitely prefer the drone for the two options.
How close are you getting to that?
So we are restricted by NOAA permits that we can't really break 10 feet. We have to stay above 10 feet, but the receptacle that we're suspending from the drone does extend another about 5 or 6 feet below the drone itself. So by the time that receptacle is over the dolphins, it's got a separation of only like 2 or 3 feet. So it's got to be pretty close to get that exhalation.
You're not seeing any anxiety from the dolphins from it being above the noise?
Not yet. So what we've done is we've done a slow approach with the dolphins at the facility. We started with a dummy drone, just made out of cardboard, and we played the audio of what a drone sounds like on a speaker, and just kind of held that over them, let them get used to that. And again, this is working with captive animals. It's going to be a little bit different in the wild, but what we've seen with some studies and some research is it's kind of the same approach as these animals seeing a seabird flying overhead. It's kind of the same distraction they would have as something like that passing through. So they might be curious at first, and then if it's not going to bother them or they're not afflicted by the noise, then they're not going to have a care in the world.
Yeah, staff at Dolphin Research Center, I mean, they very protective of the animals, so it was one of those. Yeah, they were incredibly gracious in letting us, do this project and test it out. But they would be the first people to say we're not gonna do this anymore.
Right. Yeah. And this piggybacks off of what we want to do as a foundation, as an organization. We want folks to have this experience. So we have a couple interns that are working with us. Our drone pilot is volunteering her time to do this work. So this is what we want to do. We want to see people excel in these roles. Sure.
The drone will be flown off a boat, I guess?
Yes, it'll be launched from a boat. Yes. Yeah. And at sometimes it'll be out of sight.
Yeah.
The permanent population of dolphins, or they're migrating there?
So that's another good question. So there's two distinct populations. In Biscayne Bay, you have one set population of bottlenose dolphins. There's about 150 to 200 resident dolphins that live in the bay all the time. They don't go into the ocean unless it's just to go out real quick and come back. They stay in the bay. Same thing for Florida Bay. In Florida Bay, which is on the west side of the Florida Keys, they have their own distinct population of a couple hundred individuals as well. They don't intermingle very often, those two subpopulations. Every now and then they do meet up and around the Card Sound area, but for the most part, those are two different subgroups of bottlenose dolphins, which are completely different from the ones that are offshore. Those are typically much larger animals. Those bottlenose dolphins that stay off on the ocean side, they're much bigger, much darker gray colors, and that's another separate population.
But in the bay here, in Biscayne Bay, there's 200 or 300, that's it?
Yeah, 150 to 200 individuals, yeah.
So I'm going to talk to you about our sea turtle nesting program that we recently took over this season. I'm sure if you are on Key Biscayne, you're familiar with the sea turtle nest, but Virginia Key also has nesting there, and they are not part of the county. So NOAA actually used to do this beach for the past 31 years, and they recently stopped funding it through NOAA and passed it on to MORAES. You can see here that that's a sea turtle nest there in that picture, and we are out on Virginia Key every morning at 6:30 in the morning, and we walk the 2.4 miles of Virginia Key, and it is volunteer based. So we have different volunteers come out every morning to patrol the beach, and they're looking for sea turtle nests and marking them similar to what you would see on Key Biscayne. And for us specifically, for some reason, Virginia Key only has loggerhead sea turtles. So on Key Biscayne, every once in a while, you'll get a leatherback. On Miami Beach, they're having green sea turtles and leatherbacks and loggerheads. So we're hoping that maybe one day we'll get a green or leatherback, but we're only looking for these loggerhead sea turtles. So, here is what a turtle crawl looks like on over here. And so that's what we're looking for when we are walking the beach earlier in the season, from May through July, end of July. And then when we see them, we have to identify what it is. So either a mom sea turtle will come on land and nest, and so what we would hope she would do, but they also come on and do something that's called a false crawl, which they come up and they're like, I don't really like this spot. I'm gonna go back in the ocean and try again another time. And so what we do is we kind of become investigators. We put ourselves as if we were mom sea turtle, and we kind of walk through the steps. So what we first do is identify the incoming crawl, and you can see that by the direction of where the sand is pushed. And then when we get up to the nest, we try to determine if she dug a hole and sprayed it everywhere. But in Florida, we're very hands-off. Everything is very hands-off. So we just kind of have to make educated estimates on where we think this nest is before we mark it off. In other states, they'll dig through the nest to find exactly where that egg chamber is. So we don't do that. So we make a pretty educated guess and mark it off. And you're obviously familiar with that. And there it stays. We mark that and we take all the data on it. So we take the width of the crawl. We also then mark where we think the egg chamber is and have a marked point, like a tree or a sign that isn't going to move, just in case something happens to those states where we marked it off. We can go and find that GPS point and that marked area so that we can find that nest again when it's supposed to hatch. And so here you can see tiny, tiny little crawls. That's from a nest that had hatched. So they usually take about 55 days to hatch in their nest. It depends on the time of the year. So earlier in the season when it's still a little cooler out, it might take a little longer. Now we're in the middle of summer, they're hatching like that. And so we can identify if it hatched. We obviously can see all those crawls, and usually there's a little indentation in the nest so we can determine where they exactly came from. And like I said, Florida's hands off. So we see that happen, we write it down in our data sheet, but we don't touch it for 3 days, giving the turtles, if they're still in there, a few more nights to get out on their own. So 3 days later, we go back and we dig exactly where we saw that hatch hole. And we dig up and we just count how many eggs had hatched. If there's any live hatchlings still stuck in the nest, sometimes they're stuck in roots, sometimes they're weak. We help them out and then we put them on the beach so they can make their way to their ocean on their own. And then we count how many eggs were in the nest. So we, if it's hatched, we can count if it's hatched. If they're whole, we can open up and see maybe why it didn't hatch, maybe it didn't. There was no embryo, so it was just a dud egg. So we get all that information, we mark it all down, and then at the end of the season, we submit it to FWC to report the data. So the state has all the data from all the years of all the beaches, and so they can know what's really, really going on throughout the state. And it helps with management decisions and protecting the species. And that's cute. It's obviously like the best thing you could ever do. It's so good.
Yeah, we had 2 this morning. So we're walking the beach. We saw 2 nests, saw all the trails. It's nice to know that they made it all the way to the water.
And it's not a bad view. Every morning at 6:30, it's a beautiful sunrise. All of our volunteers are really have a great time when they're out there. A lot of them don't have backgrounds in marine science, which kind of ties in what we're talking about. We want everyone to get these experiences, even if they're not the marine science background. So they're all having a great time this season. And like I said, the reason we do this is to protect the nest. So if we didn't mark them off and everyone went to the beach and they stuck their umbrellas in the sand, not knowing where the nests are, they could be putting their umbrella through or stomping all over or driving on the beach, and this helps keep them safe. It also helps collect data for FWC, which helps with management decisions and protecting of the wildlife. Virginia Key, for example, all the way on the northern point, around the corner is Bill Sadowski Wildlife Area. And I don't know if you're familiar with just Virginia Key in general, but there's not a lot of building there, and a lot of environmentalists like to keep it that way. And so having this information of how many protected animals are using it for nesting, it helps in those arguments, in those conversations. And I have to give a shout out to National Save the Sea Turtle Foundation because they gave us a nice chunk of money to help us get through the season. It was our first year doing that, so we really appreciate them for that. All right, so just a little bit about us. We talked about the 3 main projects that we're working on, but we also, the whole reason we're doing this is to give back to the community and our marine environment. So ways that we feel like we do that and get people involved are through our volunteering program. So our monthly events that we talked about at Darwin Beach, as well as the volunteers that stay with me throughout the whole summer. We do give service hours for those who need it. We really like to help. We like to be involved with anything they need. If we have, I have some people that are trying to apply for undergrad positions in marine science. We would love to help them with that, so going a long way. We have internships. Each one of our projects, we have internships specific to helping with those projects. So I have an intern for turtles, we have an intern for CASP, and we want to keep growing that as much as we can. And they do their own project within the project. So for example, that's Alex. She's our intern for sea turtles, and she's going to be doing a mapping project for school based on the sea turtles that we found. And this year we're super excited that we offered the Aspiring Marine Scientist Scholarship. We just notified our 2 recipients that we had offered $1,000 to each of them. And it's really for students looking to study marine science in the area at local universities that are born and bred here. And we're really, really thrilled to be able to give a little bit of help in any way that we can so they can, purchase their books or take that class that they didn't think they could take, or hopefully it helps a little bit.
Yeah, that circles back to making sure these young folks are encouraged to pursue their dreams, and hopefully they see a light at the end of the tunnel that, oh, there is opportunity here, and MORAES is here to help them out. So we're really excited about offering those scholarships.
And then for you all, if you would like to help MORAES, there's so many ways that you can do it. Obviously, number 1 is volunteer. These are some of our hard workers ripping out some non-native plants there on Darwin Beach. You can follow and interact with us on social media if you do that. We are very new and it takes up a lot of energy, so we would love to gain more followers. You're more than welcome to join us on our technology endeavors. You can donate to MORAES. You can do that on our website directly. And you can also, if you don't want to donate, you can also add us to your Amazon Smile account. It's our full name under MORAES. So you can find out all this information on our website, which I'll put up in a second. And then tell your friends and family about us. Of course, like we said, we're very new and we're just, starting off, but we would really love the community to have our back. All right, does anyone have any questions?
What's adding to the Amazon Smile account?
So Amazon has a feature. If you go to, instead of just Amazon.com, you go smile.amazon.com, and the majority of the things you purchase, they give a certain percentage back to the nonprofit of your choice. And so we're registered through Amazon as a nonprofit that can get a percentage of your.
No money comes out of your pocket. Amazon distributes that money on your behalf. Every purchase you make. It's a nice feature. And one of the things that, I was talking to some of the folks earlier, like we are very community centric. We partner with a lot of organizations here locally, even within Key Biscayne. So we really like that family feel of being here. We do a lot of the work with, Salt, Waterfront, Erasmus, obviously. Fill a bag. So yeah, so we like where we're at and we want to expand that. And with your help, I think we'll be able to do that.
I have another question about turtles. I've heard that when they hatch, sort of less than 1% actually become an adult because they get eaten on the way out by seagulls and raccoons and fish and all that.
Yeah.
First of all, is that true?
We say 1 in 100 of the loggerheads will make it to adulthood. There's other species that have a tougher time out there, but loggerheads 1 in 100-ish.
So does anybody have a program that can help them out a little bit, like keep them and feed them for a few?
I swim with them and live with them for as long as I can, but eventually they go too far offshore. So
in Florida, it's a hands-off approach. I think it's a natural thing. So they are food for animals out in the ocean. It's a natural thing. The problems that come in for them specifically is the human-related impacts that they have. So if those turtles aren't making it to the ocean because there's too much lighting behind them, or because somebody poached their eggs, or because we are developing our coastlines and they don't even have a place to lay, that's when those numbers go down. So the way to help continue to grow them is to take away the non-natural things, so the human impacts, and that's just raising awareness about the lighting issues. Key Biscayne, we're really lucky because there's not buildings there. We don't have any turtles come out and they're not disoriented. They go pretty much right to the water. but I can see in some areas where Fisher Island is lighting up, they'll go that direction. And I know on Fisher Island, on Miami Beach, it's a huge problem. And whole nests will just go the wrong way and they won't make it out into the ocean or.
Biscayne, it took us a big fight.
Yeah, you guys are
For the lighting, yeah.
You do wonderful.
Arguing and
They still want to put more lights on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then we told them the beach is not ours, it doesn't belong to the building. But what if I want to walk at the beach?
Yeah. If it makes you feel any better, if from the sea turtle community, everyone knows that Key Biscayne does a really, really good
Yeah.
job. So you were talked about in a good way. Yeah, you did a great job.
Poaching a big problem.
And people used to go and collect the eggs to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Poaching is a big problem too, yeah.
Yeah.
Big problem.
It's not a big problem as much anymore, but we do, at least on Key Biscayne, probably every other year we'll have a poach.
But aren't you making poachers easier by marking the nesting spot? Aren't you making it easier for poachers?
Yeah, that is part of some of the argument against that. It's not seen as much that we have to not mark it, like it's not as much of that problem, but ideally that we do take little steps. So when we see those turtle tracks come up, we like cover them all up and mark kind of off where it was. And you'd be surprised how small that hole is. So they have to be really determined poachers to dig through the whole triangle because it's not as easy to find as you think, especially if we take off all the designations. But yes, technically they could dig up that whole thing and try to get it.
The poaching's not as damaging as the thousands of tourists that have umbrellas that could, unknowingly, stab through the nest. So having those marked areas really helps the turtles from just the sheer number of people on the beach.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We also
Turtles,
I'm sorry.
when they come out, can they be tracked somehow? Is it some tracking device can be attached to them, the little ones?
Probably, but it would take a lot of effort and money, and Florida, like I said, very hands off. I know that in Australia there was a study that they did that, and you pretty much got all of them into sharks and
Right.
fish bellies, just going back and forth.
Yeah, my understanding is we've always told the kids we've learned this from Theo, not to touch it. That's why we're hands off, because the turtle needs to make it to the water to know where to come back.
Yeah.
It's in their internal GPS, so if you take care of them, they lose that sense of.
Yeah, so we do our best to, if we're helping them out, if they're weak, putting them still far enough that they have to do it on their own so that they can get their bearings, not only to imprint on the beach and know where to come back, but also get their strength up. And you'd be surprised, like they're struggling to get up through the sand. The moment they hit the water, they're just like, here I am, I know what I'm supposed to do.
And they re-nest where they were born.
Correct. And one of the things we want to do down the line is take a look. So NOAA has been collecting after they had hatched. They have eggs that they left behind, and NOAA has a sample of eggs from the past 30 years of every single nest, which would be really cool. It's not my data, so I don't know, but if we get a student in there to look at the genetics of that, because that would be really cool. But
Okay.
a lot of pipe dreams.
Once the turtle is ready to lay eggs, how much time she has to choose a good spot? Like you said, sometimes they come back to the without laying and looking for another spot. How much time they have to find them for themselves a good spot to lay? Once they're ready to lay.
Usually it's a few days. Often I'll see like a false crawl, and then the next day I'll see in a very close location, something that I would assume is the mom coming up the next day. Sometimes it's the same night. We'll have one right here, and then like 20 feet down the beach, there's another one, and it's a nest. So it's usually pretty fast. And then the turtles will nest every 2 weeks. The same mom can nest 3 or 4 times a season. Every 2 weeks she'll come back, but then she won't come next year. So.
And some,
To be more this year, was there a change or just more identified? Excuse me, because she raised her hand.
For our beach, it was an average year.
Okay.
But it changes. Last year it was super low, but we don't think that was because of anything. It's just the natural order. And then the year before it was like,
Bill Bax is low this year.
yeah, they're very wary of COVID. So.
They're always waiting for a
What do the
full-time-
poachers do it for? I know I was in Southeast Asia 25 years ago or 40 years ago or something, and they ate them.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
you could go into a restaurant and get turtle eggs. In fact, I was presented with turtle eggs one night to eat. And this was quite an honor. But
Yeah,
is that what happens here? Are they mostly for eating, or are people hatching them for turtles? Or
Yeah.
what are they using?
It would definitely be food or selling them. There's no, they wouldn't be able to hatch them. I mean, they could try, but it wouldn't work. They probably wouldn't make it. So,
It's not legal anymore in either.
it's super, yeah, it's very illegal. But yeah, I would say eating, and I hesitate because even if they got it at the level, it depended on how far along they were in their incubation, if they were even edible anyway. So it's really not as big of a problem as some of the other issues that we see, but yes, eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd want to get it at that perfect sweet spot where you could, in theory, eat a turtle, but how would you know
Yeah.
between the 0 and 60-day mark? And then the fines actually are pretty scary when you look on the outside of the marked nest. It says, correct me, at $25,000 and up to a $100,000 fine if found poaching it. And I have to assume that the monetary gain you'd get from the eggs itself is nowhere near that amount of money. So
They're pretty good at it. Because there were a fair number of, eggs that were eaten, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And all those,
So they must know when, they aren't very good, so.
so every species of sea turtle is in fact endangered, and so they are all protected and under global protection from activities like that. So that's why those penalties are so steep.
I have a question also, but just to add to what you were saying earlier about some of the obstacles that they have, lighting disorienting them and buildings getting in the way and things like that. Even just really simple things like beach chairs out on the beach will hinder the babies from getting back to the water. And just this morning, actually, we had, I do turtle nest evaluation on bags. So we were there, and normally we ignore it if somebody a lot of kids will come to the beach and dig holes or whatever. Usually it's not a big deal, but today we saw somebody had dug a hole that was at least 2 feet deep and had really wide, well, honestly big enough to get an adult turtle stuck. And so digging holes, while generally it's not a huge deal, that can be a problem if the holes are left there and they're deep enough and baby turtles or adult turtles can get stuck in them. Usually the babies more than the adults.
Yeah, we usually tell, if we were talking to people, if kids or anyone, go dig your hole, make your sandcastle, but when you leave it the way you found it. So
Right.
flatten it back out, fill your hole, whatever it may be, put your chair away.
Exactly.
Because it definitely impacts them.
What about the algae that accumulates?
Yeah, sometimes they have to climb up and over it.
They're pretty strong. It's surprising how well they can get through that sometimes.
This morning the sargassum was had to be at least 18 inches tall, and you got to imagine the 1-inch turtle getting up there so close to the water, and oh no, and looking over that, but they make it over.
That little, sometimes it'll block the light that they're looking
Yeah.
for too. So.
The one question I had, when you guys mark your nest, do you guys put a metal screen over it? Because that's what they do at billbacks to keep out predators, because they have a huge problem with the raccoon population.
The raccoons are tough.
Yeah, we don't do that, it's just not on our permit. But I think billbacks probably, we have a pretty bad raccoon problem too, but your team probably just has that on their permit. It's something we can explore, but we haven't.
Okay.
How many nests do you get in a year?
This year we have 67. We've had, last year we only had 40, and then the year before we had 110. So it varies. We're a very small beach. Virginia Key Biscayne has many more than that, and Miami Beach has many more than that. But so 80-ish, I guess.
Good estimate.
Have you noticed any change in wildlife since you guys started doing restoration on the beach? Because I know that on the other side of Virginia Key, where they started planting removing Australian pine and things like that, and planting sea oats and the normal stuff that would be found there. I don't know, several years ago when they started doing this, there's a crocodile that nests there fairly regularly now.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys noticed any changes like that, where more native wildlife has been attracted to that area because it's being restored or anything?
So-
I mean, I realize it's new, but.
Yeah, so the native vegetation that we put in was fairly recent, but what we have seen already is that the iguanas don't have any more hiding spots. They've gone away almost entirely. There's only a few left. And those big scavola bushes that took over that beach, there was hundreds of iguanas, but now we've removed all those little nooks and crannies that they hide in. So we're hoping that now with those plants that we put in, that native fauna does come back, whether it be wading birds or anything like that. We want to see that progression. I think that's the next step.
I don't think there were any nests on Darwin Beach this year. So that little slice where we were doing the vegetation aspect, we didn't have any sea turtles there. Everything was after bear cut. So we wouldn't be able to know if any of the work we did there benefited them yet.
So how would one go about getting in touch with you guys to volunteer or to get involved?
Thanks. This information right here. We have our social media handle, our website, and on our website, there's a tab that says Get Involved, and you can click that, and that's how you volunteer, or just shoot us an email, and we are the ones who respond, so you know the faces.
You'll hear from us.
And we will respond. We're pretty excited whenever we get an email.
Got an email, yeah.
Do you have like special training for any of the activities that you guys do?
Yeah, so for Darwin Beach, it's very laid back. You just show up and we'll tell you what we're gonna do that day. So we have an on-site training of what you're gonna pull or plant.
Yeah, we'll give you a data sheet, whatever you feel comfortable with. You want to do debris, we'll give you a data sheet for that. You can do marine debris, you can do vegetation, you can do.
What is tomorrow?
Tomorrow is just an invasive removal. So at this point, we planted the plants for our last event, and we strategically did that during the rainy season so that we wouldn't have to go out there every day and water them. So tomorrow we are just going to continue moving down the beach into the next plot of land there, remove all the vegetation, let that settle in, and then hopefully plant and just continue progressing. So tomorrow would just be the removal, and then if you wanted to do marine debris, we could give that option as well. But yeah, usually around 10 volunteers. I think we were at 6 or 8 already, just to keep it small. But soon we'll be able to get those numbers back up.
We have loppers and hand saws available, for everybody to use.
Yeah.
You can continue with the training.
Yeah.
And then for turtles, we do a training in the beginning of the season. We'll have a call to action for any volunteers that are interested in committing for the whole summer. They usually come out once or twice a week, so it is a commitment. And then we do a training in the beginning. We did it on Zoom this year. We'll probably continue to do that. And then they'll get in-person training days where they're partnered up with someone who hasn't had the experience already, knows what they're doing, so they can get the hands-on experience. That's really the way you learn for the turtles.
Yeah, it was really cool because we have our group of friends or people involved with Rosensteel or the marine community in general, and you kind of get to know the faces of everyone there. But I remember on the first turtle survey, there was a girl there who I had never met before and just asked, and she just said, I would like sea turtles. And so she comes out 2 days a week, and she's very passionate about it, and it's fantastic for us to see that you're someone I've never met, you have no affiliation with marine science, you just wanted to get out and do it and to be involved, and that was the whole reason we started this. So it was really cool to see it actually in action, which was a nice feeling.
Do you guys have any age restrictions?
Not yet, no. I mean, for Darwin Beach, there are some boulders and larger rocks that you would have to be careful with, but that shouldn't hold back from, as long as there's a supervising adult, they should be fine.
Yeah, ages 4 and up are allowed to use the chainsaw. That's all I know.
Yeah.
We have waivers and things, and you have, if you're with your adult.
Yeah, no power tools for the children.
Anything else? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah, thank you for
having us.
having
We're
Thank
excited to be your first in-person.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Congratulations on the great work.
Thank you.